even if you really want it and you in your heart of hearts believe that you're the right person for that, you may not be offered the position and or the opportunity, and that doesn't mean you just stop. That means that's where you really just settle in and start putting in the extra work. The others, they may just accept that letter and say it wasn't meant for me.
So you have a passion for fitness and the desire to start your own business, but launching a massively successful fitness business is extremely complex. The systems, operations, hiring, firing, coaching, sales, and marketing are critical to success. Where do you even start? This show will give you the answers. Here is Bedros Keuilian and Bryce Henson, your hosts of the Fitness Franchise Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms.
Welcome back to another incredible episode of the Fitness Franchise Podcast. And today we have an incredible episode with a dear friend of mine who's our guest, who also is a self-sponsored police academy graduate who spent 10 years in law enforcement, 5 of those years on the SWAT team, and 2 of those years as a U.S. Marshal in their task force unit. And back in 2013, he also opened Forward Movement Training, which is an advanced special operations and civilian defense facility. And in 2019, he joined forces with Fit Body Bootcamp, which is the world's fastest growing indoor fitness franchise, as our executive director of franchise development. Matt Schneider, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Man, so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Well, you have a wealth of knowledge and wisdom and accolades, which I'm excited to get to and certainly share with our audience. But before we do, share with us your backstory. How did you get to where you are today?
It's an evolution, isn't it? So first and foremost, I married. I'll be 15 years in June.
Congrats.
Yeah.
That is not the norm these days, so well done.
It is not the norm these days, but not only that, but it's not the norm within my family.
Okay.
So, if we, depending on how deep we wanted to get into my background,
please.
I watched several men come in and out of my life as a child, to the point where I've never met somebody who's got more. They've never beat this record that I have, and it is that my mom is currently on her 9th divorce.
Oh, wow.
So, but that's a story for another day.
Okay.
But when it comes to the being married for 15 years, something I'm definitely proud of. I definitely found myself a winner. Kristen is amazing. We've got an 11-year-old son, Carter. He's just the light of our life.
Who's 11 going on 25.
Yeah.
And I say that, obviously, you and I are close friends, and having, intimate knowledge of your family. I mean, you obviously have a winner in your wife.
Yeah.
And Carter's an incredible guy, and he's 11 years old, but like wise beyond his years. Which there's I tee that up. And that's obviously, good parenting. So job well done.
Thank you. He's incredible. As far as professionally, I spent the majority of my younger years in southern Idaho, in Idaho Falls. I graduated in 2000. After high school, I really didn't have much of an idea of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. But I did have a friend that was a police officer, and he took me for a ride along one day, and I just, for the first time, understood in a small way the kind of impact that police officers had in the community. And so I started investigating it and found that Idaho State University, which was down the road from us, had a program, a 9-month program. So I self-sponsored into it, and it's kind of a funny story, but I'm not sure who or if anybody in my family prior to me went to college, but when I self-sponsored, I had very little understanding about what college was like, and that it was any different than high school, to the point to where after a couple of months of being registered and attending classes, I got a call from the registrar's office that said, hey, by the way, how do you plan on paying for schooling? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? High school is free. College is not free. So I ended up having to go and do some student loans, like emergency student loans, which thankfully came through. But I was that ill prepared at that time of my life.
That surprises me so much, because you are like the most prepared guy I know.
Yeah.
But the learning lesson there is, certainly if for our audience, whatever level they are currently right now, you certainly can develop and get better and grow with time. So kudos to you.
Yeah, adapt and overcome is
Totally.
what I am doing. But graduated from that academy after 9 months, patrol certified, detention certified. But being certified is not having a job. It's just I had the certificates then be hired where the agency wouldn't have to send me through the academy, which is a huge value to the agency. But it was enough for me to understand that law enforcement was the next step that I wanted to go into professionally. But I still had some schoolwork that I wanted to do, so I moved to Boise, Idaho. Started attending college at Boise State University. Eventually got my degree in psychology.
Yep.
And in 2006, I was hired by the Ada County Sheriff's Office in the jail.
Is Ada County where Boise's at?
It is, yeah. So Ada County is the largest county in the state. It's where the capital is. The population there is about 750,000 people. So it's a decent size area. But I spent about a year and a half working in the jail, learning the ropes of law enforcement and kind of sharpening my teeth and how to be in that environment. As you can imagine, you can't be a crook and also get hired as a cop. So my understanding of the criminal mindset was very limited. But I became aware, through that process, and then went to patrol, spent a few years in patrol, and then tried out for SWAT. And I was fortunate enough to be selected for that. Spent 5 years on the team, as you mentioned, and then kind of as a collateral duty was selected for the U.S. Marshal's Office Task Force, and that was on the fugitive apprehension team. So the ones that really didn't want to get caught were the ones that our team would go out and get. And I loved it. My wife did not like it so much.
For obvious reasons?
Yeah. A lot of times where she would learn where I was at, what I was doing based on what the news was reporting. As you can imagine, the other halves were very anxious. And,
Sure.
Eventually, I did a short stint, about a year and a half, as an undercover narcotics detective. And then, in 2013, I opened up Forward Movement. And it was an incredible business that I leveraged my special operations understanding and experience in, and wanted to blend that with the very strong self-defense community that was in the area.
And that's actually how we met, I believe, in 2018 when our close mutual friend, Bedros, CEO and founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, and Trulene took our leadership team up for a little, I guess, tactical leadership building team, and certainly met, which we'll get into. But I don't want to gloss over your law enforcement, your SWAT, your U.S. Marshal experience. So kind of talk to us about that. Tell the audience about, kind of what that was like, what the application process, and you're such a humble guy, you kind of just glanced over the application. Certainly, that's a huge accolade to you. So tell the audience about that experience, what you gained in terms of knowledge, et cetera. And then also probably you encountered a lot of challenges as well. So I want to kind of hear both sides, both the highlights, but also the challenges with the position.
Yeah. It's interesting. So are you talking about the application process to get hired on with the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So even though I had put myself through the academy and was certifiable, it was much more of a hiring process than I had ever realized. In fact, the first time I applied, I made it all the way through, and from start to finish, it's about a 6-month process. Okay. It's very in-depth background checks and several layers of interviewing, polygraphs, and but I wasn't selected. I had very limited life experience when I originally applied, but.
And you had already graduated Boise State this time with psychology?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're 22, 23?
I was 23, 24.
Okay.
Yeah. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. So it was really the first time in my life where I was up against a real significant obstacle of what I knew I wanted to do and what the outcome was looking like it was going to be. I got the letter in the mail that says, basically thanks but no thanks. And I remember calling the HR people and just pleading my case and being like, you guys are making a mistake. You've got to reconsider. And they did. And so they invited me back into the hiring process again. And at that point, I got got selected. So it was quite the process.
And I think the big learning lesson for our audience there is the value of persistence. If you want something, you want a goal, you want to grow a business, it's not going to be handed to you, and probably not going to be handed to you on the first ask, right? Like it's about persistence, seeing that through, and credit to you and acknowledge you for having that mindset, right?
Yeah. Thanks. And that was probably where it started to plant the seed that being persistent in the things that you want and putting in the work and doing the things that other people may not be willing to do, it can pay off.
Yeah.
Right. If I had just rolled over at that first time I'd been really knocked down, who knows what that journey would have looked like for me, as far as that path I would have been on. And so one of the takeaways was, you got to fight for things that you want. And, even if you really want it and you in your heart of hearts believe that you're the right person for that, you may not be offered the position and or the opportunity. And that doesn't mean you just stop. That means that's where you really just settle in and start putting in the extra work that the others, they may just accept that letter and say it wasn't meant for me. Or
you could look at it from the mentality, it is meant for me. I just need to, buckle up and double down and really put my mind to it.
Yeah, I just didn't do a good job showing them it was meant for me.
Right.
And taking some ownership in it in the process. Yeah,
good on you.
Yeah.
We'll continue to walk through that journey within law enforcement. Obviously, the SWAT team, the U.S. Marshals, very well-known, organizations, and extremely, very, very cool that you had that experience. So kind of talk to our audience and viewers about what that experience was like, the highs and lows, and definitely anxious to hear.
So the jail was interesting. The jail, that's not where I wanted to be. Every episode of Cops is filmed on the road in patrol cars going and chasing, and arresting bad guys. But where the need was in the department was in the jail. And so, essentially you're just a glorified adult babysitter. There's not a whole lot that goes on in there. A lot of the inmates they're going through the court process, so their court hasn't been the case hasn't been decided on. Once they're either found guilty of the crime that they've been charged with, and if it's a felony, they end up going out to the prison. So most of the time, inmates are relatively on their best behavior. Now you have some that have been in the system for a long time, and they were a different kind of challenge. But what I did recognize is that there was some deputies in the jail that they really had aspirations to go to patrol, but time and time again they were not selected, and that's probably the first time I realized that the importance of being on a team, but somebody's got to be number one, and putting in the thought process of how am I going to make myself stand out? What kind of work am I going to do that the others may not be willing to do? And if the cream rises to the top, then let me figure out how to be that cream. And so whether it was a bunk search, whether it was a pat down, whether it was, what was called the 50W, which is just the walking around and checking to make sure everything is status quo and nobody's sharpening spoons or,
sharpening spoons implying like trying to break stuff and all that.
Yeah, the old shank kind of thing,
Yeah.
I would always do that to like the very best of my ability, and I would try to. I wouldn't just do it to check the box. Like we would have to every so on. It was like 30 minutes or so. We'd have to walk around, and when I would do that, I would be intentional about what it was I was actually looking to do, rather than just make sure I was seen on camera walking around,
right,
so that that box would be checked, and so that when I applied for patrol, I ended up number 2 on the list, and so I was invited out. It was just under a year and a half that I was in the jail. Then I got to go to patrol, and I just loved it. I loved being that. They refer to the thin blue line. I loved being that person. Everybody's got their own reason why they get into law enforcement. For me in particular, it was because I truly believe that everybody has their own version of what they believe the American dream to be. And there are people out there who will take the opportunity to stand in the way of people and that dream that they look to achieve. And law enforcement plays a role in being able to address those people and eliminate them from the equation, so that people can go out, the good people can go out and just pursue their dreams and work hard and look to accomplish amazing things in life. And unfortunately, criminals and the criminal mindset, it's in every community, and the need for law enforcement is just critically important.
Sure.
And even though we're in some times where there's some major pushes to defund the police and things, I don't think communities really understand the level of impact that it would have if law enforcement were to be defunded. But
when you defund the police, you create more crime.
Yeah.
The bad guys don't go away, right? So
Yeah.
you having that mindset, obviously, is super critical.
Yeah, exactly. So I really enjoyed it. I did find that the crazier the event was, the more uncertain and dynamic was, the better I seemed to operate in it. And I was able to continue, for whatever reason, keep a cool head on my shoulders and be able to, rationalize what was going on and make appropriate decisions, which then kind of put me on the radar for the SWAT team. And I had some folks ask if I had thought about applying for it, and so after about 3 years on patrol, I applied for the SWAT team, and that was quite the process. But
In what way?
well, as you can imagine, the SWAT team gets called in when law enforcement needs help, right? So when the police need help, they call in SWAT, and SWAT really specializes in the more dynamic critical incidents, hostage rescues, active shooter, things where you need special weapons and tactics, which is what SWAT stands for. And so in order to be able to be selected to join the team, you have to be able to demonstrate a very high proficiency in your ability to make split-second decisions, to be able to you've got to be a hell of a shot. You've really got to be a very proficient shooter, and they know that they have to train you, so they're not looking necessarily for tactics, but they're looking for somebody who's got a really sound mind and somebody who can be a good fit. One of the main things is somebody who's humble, somebody who's coachable, and
probably cool, calm, and collected. Probably, I would imagine a high level of emotional intelligence, which you have in spades.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. But no ego. Like if somebody's got ego, there's no room on a team for that.
And why that's probably a team in general, but why would you say specifically, even more hyper-focused, why that can't exist in the SWAT team?
Well, because of the team aspect of it, right? So, on a SWAT team, and again, I've been amazed at the number of parallels in business that all this experience has played. But a team is a team, and nobody ever really achieves a high level of success by themselves. People can achieve certain amounts of success, but if you really want to have real success and real impact, it requires a team. And on the SWAT team, everybody's got a role, and you got to be an expert in your role. So whether you're the breacher, but if you're the breacher, you could be the mechanical breacher, you could be the explosive breacher, you could be the sniper, the observer, you could be the guy that runs a robot, you could be the guy who throws the bangs. You could be the entry team. So everybody's got their role, and everybody needs to do their role with precision, or else the entire team could be compromised. And so if there's ego in play, the ego is, as I like to say, ego is not our amigo. And when ego's in play, then there's dynamics that are involved that are decisive, and they are not conducive to people being able to operate in the way that they need to be. We all know that when ego gets a little bit too big, it can become problematic.
Devastating, yeah.
So it's really important we don't have that.
And especially, I mean, I think it's fair to say, like in business and in pretty much any team element, that is super critical to have, humble teammates.
Yeah.
But especially when you're playing, with such, stakes like you are the SWAT team. I mean, that's just mission critical because it could be absolutely devastating if the situation doesn't pan out as it should.
Yeah. You're talking about lives. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kind of from a 30,000 foot view, kind of looking at that span in your life before we kind of transition to forward movement, what would you say your probably biggest learning lessons or takeaways would have been?
To have a servant heart.
And for you, I think that is one of your zone genius. Do you think that's factory installed, or is that developed, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think it is a little bit of both. I think people who have the most, the biggest servant heart, and the people who are the kind of the greatest thinkers and contributors are the ones that are the most kind of worldly, right? I feel like the more experience us as humans gain in understanding other cultures and other intimate pieces that make this world go round, the more we realize that life is a vapor, and what we do on this planet and the contributions we make are critically important. And I think that self-awareness is developed with, intentionality of being involved in experiences that open that up. But I also think too that like humans are inherently selfish, and so it takes real consciousness and self-awareness to fight that piece to maintain a servant heart on a local level amongst the people in our lives. And so I believe it's kind of a blend of both. But the more experiences we get, if we are intentional about it, the greater it becomes.
Yeah. Well, I think that experience that kind of laid the foundation for probably the success that you've achieved to date. So, that's incredible journey to go through. And now kind of transitioning to forward movement, which you kind of alluded to, and this is how we met, a few years ago. And I'll never forget. I mean, we went for leadership training. I had never been really exposed to too many guns. I went to the shooting range once, but a very different type of environment in terms of stress and pressure and team and leadership.
Yeah.
And I was blown away, and I'll never forget that experience. So, can you tell the audience just a little bit about, your experience with forward movement, how you got off the ground, the success that you've achieved, and obviously being close friends, I know the first few years are quite the struggle. So, we'd love to hear more.
Yeah, man. So, I was what I refer to as an accidental entrepreneur.
Okay.
My family had a business in San Francisco for many, many years. My mom and her sister and brother, they came into some money when the business sold as a result of my grandmother and her. My grandmother passed away, and then her brother, he was her partner. He was definitely getting up there in his years, and it was time to sell the business. And it was big building on Market Street, and so even with it being split three ways, there was a healthy amount of money that was involved for each sibling. And so my mom's always believed in me. She's seen that when I really put my mind to something, I'll get it done. And so she said, "Hey, Matt, I've got some money, and I'd like to do something with it. I believe that if I invest in you, then that's a good investment." And at that point, a switch kind of got flipped, and I just started thinking, what would I do if I were to offer something? What would it be? And what I knew well, and what I felt was kind of a niche thing, was the special operations sides of things. And I had been exposed through the various training locations that I'd been in with both the SWAT team and then with the U.S. Marshal's Office. There's incredible training sites out there, but they're typically reserved for the government. So I said, what if I bring something that's non-government related, but serviced the government entities, the special operations teams, and had government contracts, which I know to be real equitable, and also though helps out the everyday civilian who would just prefer to be left alone, but recognizes there is some level of need to have some self-defense skills
Completely.
and education. And so Idaho is a very Second Amendment pro state, and so we have a lot of concealed weapon carriers there. And but there's a saying out there, and it slips my mind who said it, but the sayings go something along the lines of owning a handgun, it doesn't make you armed any more than owning a guitar makes you a musician. I think it's Jeff Cooper that said it. And
I've heard that before.
Yeah, and so you have a lot of people who own lots of weapons, and they have lots and lots of ammunition, but they have very little education. And there could be a real false sense of security and confidence that comes with that.
Yep.
And heaven forbid there be a circumstance where one of those people were to be tested. That is not the time to figure out whether or not your skill set and your confidence is well-founded or not, because again, lives are on the line. So I knew that. I knew that there's literally thousands of people who have concealed weapons permits in the area, and so I thought, let me bring this business to the market and see how I can help. But I didn't have my degree is in psychology, right? I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about, I knew the importance of leadership. I had experienced significant, great leaders in the department. I'd also experienced poor leaders in the department. I understood the importance of having leadership, but I'd never been a leader to this extent. And man, there's just so many different things, and every entrepreneur watching this can relate. And I wasn't part of a franchise, so I didn't have anybody to look to. I didn't have a headquarters. I didn't have an entire team.
Model. Yeah.
I didn't have any of it.
No.
So the first couple of years were rough. We were not experiencing any profitable months. I had built in a healthy profit margin, or I'm sorry, run rate and working capital. I had built in a healthy working capital to kind of, because what I did know is most businesses don't profit their first year, right?
For a few years, for that matter.
Yeah. But I was burning through that at a rapid rate. And our accountant, I remember the first year our accountant, I'll never forget, he does the numbers and he's like, listen, you can't have many more months like this. And we closed out the first year $90,000 upside down.
Oh, wow.
And
after all the money that you invested to get it off the ground.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we invested quite a bit. I mean, the facility was an incredible
Immaculate.
facility. Indoor. It looks like a little scenario village in there. It had a house,
What was the square
2-story house.
footage?
The inside was 30,000 square feet, and we had
Massive.
additional 20,000 outside, and it was big. And then we had a classroom, a shooting simulator, vehicles. I mean, when you walked into it, it was like you were on the set of, of a movie, some town. We didn't skimp on any of it. So the initial lift was very expensive, and because I didn't know what I was doing, and I just didn't know where to turn. I didn't know. I was spending money all over the place on all kinds of crazy marketing things. Anybody that called and said, "Hey, I'm from the Yellow Pages. Would you like to do an ad?" I'm like, "Okay." All I know is market or die. So how much is it? There was no thought of who is my avatar, and is my avatar even here? Are my avatar's eyeballs going to be on this?
Oh, wow.
It was just, I need to market. I need to get the word out there. And so I was just spending money every which way. And my wife, she was helping me. She was the CFO, but there was really no positive dollars to be messing around with, So I don't know what you call it, but more of a collector than anything, I guess. But she would say, "Hey, we got to have a meeting about the finances." And all I knew was the numbers were not good. The first couple of years, I just knew the numbers were not good, and she would have to fight me tooth and nail to sit down because it would bring me so much anxiety. Kristen, yeah. Okay. And I just didn't want to talk about it. I was like, I just need to keep working. I just need to keep like figuring I was there from 7 in the morning to 11 midnight every single day.
Yep.
And so many times I'm thinking, what did I do? I left a job, I was making more than 6 figures, and in, 6-figure job in Boise, Idaho, you're doing pretty good. Wow. And I left that. There was security, there was benefits. I cashed out my retirement, and we had two homes at the time. And I was just like, what did I do? I knew in my heart of hearts that I had brought something really viable, that the market was well receiving it. I just wasn't leading it. And at some point about that 2-year mark, I realized, it's not the business model. It's not the way it's laid out. It's certainly not the team. I had incredible instructors, Royal Marine Commandos, and I had an Army 18 Delta guy that did our medical stuff, and retired police officers. I mean, I had a stacked team. It wasn't the team. Probably the first time I really had to, look internally and say, this is my fault. I'm just ineffectively leading these guys, and if I don't fix that, there's no saving the business. And so that was a turning point.
Big aha.
Yeah, it was a big aha, and all of a sudden I started investing in mentors, and I got plugged into a mastermind, and learned the value of having other people who were once where I was and were now where I wanted to be, surrounding myself with them. And as Bedros likes to say, the proximity is power. And I started getting the environmental exposure, and I would sit down with them, and we would have our masterminds, and these are all older guys. They were all running multi-million-dollar companies, and they invited me in because they liked that I was younger. I brought kind of a fresh thing. They were an old, crusty white guy. They'd all been in business for a long time, and it was one of those kinds of things. But they liked my energy, and they liked my vision. That I was a kind of a natural visionary, and they like, hey, you can provide us that. So from there, I just kind of learned that leadership is always the problem and leadership is always the solution. And as soon as I started dealing with that, things started to change. And it wasn't too long after that, we started finally breaking even. We're just like, I could take a breath that we weren't losing money.
Yep. And this is about 3 years in now?
Yeah, about 3 years, yeah. And then it just kind of hockey sticked from there.
Good on you, man. Well, it's interesting in being an entrepreneur, right? You would like to think that, everyone knows the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not everyone gets that, but thankfully you did. And going back to the point on ego, right? Like removing the ego, because it's a very humbling realization when you realize that the buck stops with you. You are number one, and things are not progressing the way you want them to be. There's no one else to point fingers, right? Yeah. And having the wherewithal to the emotional intelligence to kind of remove that ego, and then seek for mentorship, trying to model success. I think for me, outside eyes, that's the big takeaway, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, good on you. Well, before we kind of transition now to you being a complete franchising expert, in your role at Fit Body Bootcamp, you did actually, sell the business. Can you talk a little bit about, that? Because I think there's value for the audience, not only to grow, learn some very tough entrepreneurial lessons to kick it off, and understand the value of leadership, the value of mentorship and modeling success, but also, kudos to you for taking it through, hockey sticking, and then, exiting. So what did that process look like? Because I think there's some gold nuggets that I know our audience would really gain a lot of value from.
Yeah, man. So I, in business, I learned that, you should always have some sort of end in mind. You should always know what the end looks like, and whether that's, you want to have a certain amount of locations, or grow to a certain point, or you want to take an exit so that you can close that chapter and open the next. And so I realized that I opened Forward Movement as a completely naive, accidental entrepreneur, and it provided me an incredible amount of knowledge and experience. But I didn't want to stay in the tactical training environment for forever. I felt like I had spent at that point, 10 years really just my life being tactics and special operations. And I was ready for a change. And so what I ended up doing is I broke the business up into two chunks when I decided I was time to make the move. And the first side was the Scenario Village piece of it. I approached the sheriff's office and their leadership team and told them, hey, what would you guys think about this being your training, your designated training site, and moving your entire training division over here. And we started engaging conversations in that, and they knew that to build out what I had created and to go through that entire process, it made a lot of sense for them to have a discussion about it. So on that side, we worked through it and came up with an incredible opportunity. And to this day, it's the training headquarters for the Ada County Sheriff's Office, and agencies from all over the state and the Western United States train there on a regular basis. And so it's really cool that to think that it lives on, and it's providing the training venue to better prepare our frontline first responders to better serve the community.
Yeah.
And then on the civilian-based side of it, on the government contracts and everything, because we had landed a number of government contracts, and so that whole piece of it, there was a guy that had been deploying with the CIA for a number of years, and he was ready to stop that piece of it. And those guys, they make pretty decent money, and he was just at a point where he was ready for the next chapter of his life, and we worked out a good deal, and so it's operational. And
about how long did that take? And the reason I'm asking, obviously, I have a little bit of insight, to it, but not full granularity. But what I know in working with you, and I've actually had the privilege of being able to successfully, sell two businesses. One, not so much. So it definitely doesn't always go to plan.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like outside eyes, there was just a smooth process on your end.
Yeah.
So, kudos to you for that. But like, how did that all work out in such a smooth fashion?
So I think, I just think that when we show up in the world with the right intentions, and we have just purity in the why behind what we do, people come into our lives for the right reasons. And so it wasn't 100% smooth. We did have somebody come in that we got pretty far into the process with, only to find out that they had some things in their background that I was not okay with.
Okay.
And so we parted ways with her in the process. After we'd put in quite a bit of time and energy into it. But
which happens.
It happens.
It's part of the process.
Yeah. And it, I'm glad it did, because if it was going to, this whole thing, this whole company is meant to serve people, and it's meant to better prepare people. And having the right CEO in the place, and the person that's going to carry on the vision and carry on the culture and the brand that we spent so many years developing, that's really important, right? And that was really important to me. So she just wasn't the right fit, and then this other fella came into the picture, and he was referred to by a friend who knew that the other deal had fallen through, and so the connection was made, and it was a pretty smooth process. Yeah, it was. My wife, she really handled the majority of it. I really owe a lot of credit to her, because right at the tail end, when we were wrapping up the details of it, I had already transitioned to Fit Body Boot Camp, and and so she was actually handling it from afar. She was in California, really helping with a lot of the operational stuff, and then kind of getting the deal packaged up. Yeah. So I owe a lot of credit to her for that.
Yeah, good on you guys.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, now I want to kind of transition to really what I believe is the meat and potatoes. And, certainly I have some affinity of our relationship and working together, but kind of as the story goes, and say this with such affinity, but you kind of walked into our team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, had a connection with our CEO, mutual friend Bedros, and had some experiences with leadership team. And all of a sudden, you're the guy that kind of started showing up, reaching out, connecting with B. And before you know it, as you're sitting in a boardroom meeting, we didn't really have any available position.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want to, put words in your mouth. So curious from your perspective, but, it seemed to be that, from my perspective, you're a visionary. You kind of, see the course and really plot that out, and probably something spoke to you, and you really proactively looked out for an opportunity, and shoot, man, it has been a godsend. So,
yeah, thank you.
Last few years of working together, and even with COVID, probably the biggest challenge that we've experienced, the fitness, business industry, since the, can we even remember?
Yeah.
And we've navigated it, extremely well. And you've came in and really led the team so exceptionally well. And a lot of the success that we've achieved has really been, in part to you. So I want to acknowledge you for that. But, tell a story of Fit Body Bootcamp, how from your perspective it all came to be, and really, talk about, your role and your expert status as a franchising expert, being the executive director, franchise growth.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I read a book a while back called Leadership by John Maxwell, and he talks about the differences of authority, and particularly the positional authority versus moral authority.
Moral authority.
And when I met Bedros for the first time, he was amongst others, and I'd never heard of him. I'd never heard of Fit Body Bootcamp, but there was something about him that just stood out with how authentic he was. And I just, you're a cop for long enough, you kind of pick up on is this person a good person or is this person not a good person? And he was a good person, I could tell. He appeared to have moral authority. And also positional authority with being the CEO of this company called Fit Body Bootcamp. So I started looking into Fit Body. I started looking into Bedros. I found that he was pretty prominent on social media, and so it was pretty easy to get a pulse on who he is as a person. And read his book, Man Up, and it was just, I appreciated how authentic he was and how transparent he was with his journey, because as an entrepreneur myself, there was just so many points where I could identify with his journey. Two completely different companies, but so many similarities. And I believe that many entrepreneurs can relate. So it was through that process, you came down with the team, he brought Andrew, and we did kind of that rite of passage type of event for his son as he was becoming a teenager. And we just stayed in contact, and I would engage with his stuff on social media. He would do his Vine. And when I decided it was time to turn the page and do something new, there was something that told me Bedros and his company is the direction I want to go. I could really relate. I felt like we were cut from the same cloth, and so I reached out to him and just started having a conversation, and that led to eventually an invitation to come down and chat, and just to see headquarters and talk about what goes on here at the franchising headquarters. And he's like, hey, I don't really have a position for you, but I would love to have you join the team. And Bedros, being just the visionary that he is, he's always looking, several steps ahead. Yeah. And so he's a smart guy. He knew that I would offer some good value to the team if I joined it. And so he made me an offer. I accepted. And a few months later, I was moving the family down to Southern California, and to a place I'd never been,
right?
As far as Chino Hills goes, and started the team. It'll be 2 years this coming May.
And it's interesting. I remember being in those boardroom meetings and B's like, man, I see so much value in this guy, and obviously, connecting with you, but like, there's really not a high level position. There wasn't really a position, but then, a few weeks kind of, curtailed and something opened up, but there was no high level position. Certainly not, executive director of franchise development, which you hold today, a prominent, part of our leadership team. But we had a position in operations actually as a coaching and profitability coach, which you didn't have any experience within the Fit Body model.
Right.
You certainly developed a lot of business experience, so certainly already kind of had that, muscle memory.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me, and I think the learning lesson in the audience, even though you were so well credentialed in your previous career, owning a business, all the experience with SWAT and the U.S. Marshals, you were, again, going back to the ego, you were willing to kind of swallow the ego. You knew that, hey, this had some long-term potential here, and you were willing just to come in at a kind of entry-level position. And then, of course, very quickly, you kind of scaled the ranks. But I want to acknowledge you for that. But, talk about that process. And I think, if you could share some tips and strategies, and maybe even some learning, growth moments in the last few years as well, that could really add value to our audience's, perspective on business and growth.
Yeah, man. So, the offer to come in as a business coach on the coaching and profitability team, I mean, because it's not about ego. The title didn't mean anything. It was all about the opportunity. It was all about being able to see the vision that Bedros had, and know and believe in him that if I came and did my part, no different than when I was in the jail, that if I did what needed to be done, recognizing that this is a for-profit company, and I understand my role as a team member to always make the company more money than it cost me to be there, and I was just very intentional about that. And, I've always loved working with young entrepreneurs and helping coach them up. Because I have the experience that I do, there's a lot of empathy that I have for early entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of stories that they can tell that I can say, yes, I remember when I was in your shoes. I remember that. And so I think that's what really helped make me be successful, because when you combine the fact that I had a lot of business experience and a lot of opportunity to share my lessons learned and the arrows that I had in my back, and how I could pass those lessons on to them to help them save those hard lessons, combined with all the support of being a part of a franchise, and that I didn't have to have the answers for how to design a marketing funnel, because we had a team to do that. I didn't have to be the one to create media assets or know how to write copy, because there was teams that could do that. I just could take that, or I could get that owner plugged in, and it was just a recipe for success. And so I really stepped into a really solid team that were executing at a high level, and just leverage my background and experience to put it together with that particular owner that I was working with. Help them understand that without their execution, it's all meaningless. It doesn't matter how many resources we can give them, and how much coaching we provide. If they don't execute, they're not going to experience the success that they're after. And so, for all of the ones that did, we were able to see them elevate. And then, after, I'm not even sure, time flies, but I would say 6 months or so, some opportunities were starting to present themselves that were allowing me to step into more of a leadership role. And I just kept leveraging my, what's instinctual to me, my background experience, the fact that, being humble is a big thing, and then never forgetting that the team is we just rise and fall as a team. The SWAT team component has been instrumental in my leadership style. It's really where I really came to understand the importance and magnitude of proper leadership, and the fact that a team must respect the person instead of just the position. If someone just respects their rank, they may do what they're told because their rank's telling them to, but they've got to respect the person. And I approach everything through that lens, and it's proven to be successful.
Yeah, it's worked out. So you talked about some of the assets and support, and obviously now you lead, the many of the teams and individuals that actually produce the assets and the support for our franchisees.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the inner workings, like the value that you're able to orchestrate for our franchisees, and just kind of give the audience a little bit insight to, being, the position that you hold with our franchise, kind of what that position looks like, and really the value that we're able to provide, the average owner, if you will.
Yeah. So now, as it stands, in my role, I oversee the operations, the compliance, marketing, and sales. And the approach I take is, first and foremost, just to make sure we have the right people on the team. We say have the right person on the right seat on the bus, and so that's number one is ensuring that, and we have an incredible team.
Absolutely.
Next, I truly believe that with my position on the leadership team, is I've got 1 foot on the leadership side, I've got 1 foot on the team side, and my role, I truly believe, is that I need to do everything that I have to do in order to ensure that they have what they need to be successful. And each individual person, I approach it that way. So no matter what their responsibilities are, they have to clearly understand what's expected of them. They have to know what are their KPIs or key performance indicators. In what metrics do I grade their success?
Right.
And once that's clearly communicated and they clearly understand, then it's a matter of having the relationship of them knowing, if you need something, we need to communicate that, because I will get that for you. If you can come to me and articulate why it is you need what you need, I will get it for you. And in getting that for them, they are then able to be more efficient, provide better outcomes, beat deadlines, save the company money, or make the company more money. And so I just approach the entire team that way. And as a result, our franchisees are getting the things that they need in at the times that they need it. And that in turn helps them run their business better, serve their clients better, and ultimately make more money. And if they so choose, to open additional locations and just kind of expand their impact across multiple communities.
Yeah. Well, that's huge, and it's interesting. I mean, off the tail end of COVID, I feel like it's been such a challenging experience for many businesses, right? Specifically the fitness and restaurant business. But kind of coming at the tail end, I feel like our team dynamic is the strongest it's ever been. The support's the best it's ever been. And as we kind of see this year roll out into 2022, which we still obviously have some months to get there, it's just going to get better and better and better, because the infrastructure is so strong.
Yeah.
And that's a lot due to your oversight and the departments that you run. So I appreciate you kind of sharing with the audience some of the internal workings.
Yeah.
All right. So one other kind of big focal point that I want to hit on, and we've actually had Bedros and Aaron in a previous episode, and I'll try to round up the other project guys as well. But that's been a big part of your development and your I guess, contribution to the organization. Some of the audience probably knows a little bit about the project already, but if you can kind of share some high level, and then really kind of your role in that, and really the value that you've been able to contribute, and again, some learning lessons and some challenges along the way.
Yeah. So the project is a passion project. It's something that Bedros, Aaron, who's the VP of TrueLean, Ray, a former Navy SEAL, Steve, a former Marine, and myself all came together and really just collaborated on, and through Bedros's vision for what he wanted it to look like, we all leveraged our backgrounds. Bedros is very transparent in his book, Man Up, about his background and The fact that he was molested as a child, and how he went, so many years with that just buried inside of him, and that guilt and the shame and the rage and all of the things that he felt along the way. It impacted his relationships with his family, with his wife, the way he was running his business. And so there's that dynamic. And then you have, Ray, who's just, a Navy SEAL, and he did a lot of things in a lot of places around the world, and eventually went and did a lot of contracting stuff with the CIA. And we all just leveraged our backgrounds. And so the project is geared towards helping men fulfill their fullest potential. We know that there are so many men who are just emotionally constipated. Everybody experiences some level of trauma in life, and nobody gets through this life without experiencing something and experiencing some major hardship. But for whatever reason, culturally, us guys, we don't share, and we just kind of bottle it up, and we see it as some sort of weakness. But that's cancerous to our psyche. It's cancerous to the way that we show up to the world, and establishing real low ceilings of what we feel we can achieve, and low self expectations, and all kinds of things in a variety of areas. And we really focus on what we call our 5 F bombs, and that's the family, that's fitness, it's finances, it's faith, and that faith is really the faith in yourself and what you can achieve. And then the 5th is fulfillment. So it's a 75-hour program that leads to a lifelong brotherhood for those that graduate. And my role in it is Steve and Ray are the ones that just bring the thunder. And they are incredible what they do. There is, Einstein said it best when he said, adversity is what introduces a man to his true self. And so we introduce very systematically a lot of adversity, and physical adversity, and not a lot of sleep is happening. And we really tire these guys out, only to really get them to a place of being vulnerable enough to share when they're asked the question, what is the worst thing that's ever happened to you in life? And I would say that probably 80% of the time we hear the stories start with, I've never shared this with anybody before ever, including my wife. And it's an incredibly freeing thing for them, and we help them understand how that thing has led to so many other positive traits about their personality and what they do bring to the world, and we refer to those as their superpowers. And all of a sudden, the most problematic thing, the worst thing that's ever happened to them, they now see as being a superpower, and how they can leverage that for the good. And carry that over to their 5 F bombs. And so Bedros, is, we refer to him as Papa Bear, and Aaron is, he's like our shaman.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's our woo-woo guy.
He is woo-woo. He's deep.
He's deep. He shares some incredible insight,
Totally.
and he's got an incredible background, and the things he says are just so impactful and so meaningful. And I'm somewhere in between. Like, I'm in between bringing the thunder and insightful.
Yeah.
And the 5 of us, we balance each other out so well that the experience for those that graduate is something that is life-changing, and the trajectory that they find themselves on following the graduation is something that they never imagined. And you'd be amazed at the number of phone calls and letters and emails we get from the wives that say you telling us how it's helped and how it saved the marriage, and how it saved, in some cases there was conversations about, very dark suicidal thoughts that are now no longer part of their circumstance. And it's an incredibly fulfilling thing. It's just a wonderful way of helping men become better husbands and fathers, along the way, which then has this ripple effect. And it's our dream to help as many men as we can, knowing that we'll help, the wives and the kids and the communities and the process.
Exponential impact,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. And super inspiring to see. And obviously, kind of a little bit more on the outside eyes looking in, but certainly very impactful and, excited for even what's to come. But
Yes.
kind of putting a bow on this. I mean, I think, in all your experiences, right? Like I hear teamwork, self-development, growth, to be able to communicate, give direct feedback, removing your ego, focusing on leadership and, becoming a better man. I mean, these are all common themes, for me, listening to you and, all the stories of your successes that, have really defined who you are, defined the successes of your team. And really from an entrepreneurial perspective, for our audience, like that is foundational. If you want to, build a huge business and make a big impact, you need to work on you. You need to work on leadership, all the things that we just discussed in this call or this, the show, and super important.
Yeah, man. And we never arrive. Like, I mean, I've got a lot, in my background and a lot that I've been able to accomplish. But I'm nowhere near where I'll be if I continue doing this and continue being very deliberate about my actions and decision makings. And when it comes to leadership, when it comes to growth and things, it's a constant pursuit, and it's something that each and every one of us that wants to elevate needs to be very aware of, and just making that a part of what we do. But
your focus.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Schneider. I know I don't have you for too much longer, but man, this has been awesome. I want to transition towards the grand finale with the little lightning round, so you can kind of impart your additional wisdom to our audience.
Let's do it.
Before the success that you've achieved today, kind of looking back at the younger version of you, what would you say would be the one thing that was holding you back? And the reason I think that's so impactful, because our audience, I mean, there's things holding them back right now. So I think it's provides a lot of inspiration if you can share some vulnerability from you, how you overcame it, and really be a good lesson for our people.
Yeah, so I would say because of, I don't know if it would be pride or if it would be just cultural pressure, or I don't even know what it was, but there was a good amount of time, especially in the early years of owning a business, that I suffered in silence. And I had all of these. I mean, I just had everything was falling on my shoulders. And when you're the CEO and you're the president, there's nobody else to turn to when it comes to dealing with the problems. It's just up to you to figure out. So when I was in that role, I just suffered in silence, and people on the outside wouldn't know the difference, but the world was getting the best part of me. They were getting the fake it till you make it part, right? They were getting the smiles and the laughter and the jovial Matt, but my wife and my son, they were getting the worst part of me. I would go home and there was no more energy. There was no excitement. There was, it was just a really rough time for everybody, but my wife and son especially. And so when I look back, it was the fact that I tried to think that I had to figure out by myself, that I just kept it all inside, and that's where I at some point I just came to the conclusion that I have to involve other people, and in order to involve other people, I have to start having vulnerable conversations. I have to start putting it out there that like, guys, from the outside it looks like everything's great. From the outside, you walk into the facility and it's an incredible facility, and but the finances were a mess. The family was a mess. I had virtually no faith in myself, and so the real takeaway for that was when I started surrounding myself with others who had been there, and I knew could relate. I no longer felt like I was on an island. And as soon as I started just sharing what I was experiencing and hearing, I remember that time, and here's what I did.
The game changed for you.
The game changed, yeah. And I mean, if I would do it all over again, probably would have joined a franchise, to be honest with you. Now, knowing what I know now, and how many different mountains I had to try to overcome and did overcome by myself, but I didn't know anything about franchising. I think things would have probably looked different as well.
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, next up, you give incredible advice. What would be your best piece of advice that you would share with the audience to get them better?
I would say that if you have dreams and aspirations of accomplishing more, providing more, donating more, you just know in your gut you're capable of more, and you want to see that come to fruition and be realized, that you can't have ego. You have to put your pride in check. You have to surround yourself with others that represent the kind of life that you yourself want to have. You have to ditch unhealthy habits, unhealthy people, unhealthy relationships, and that relationship could be with food or with alcohol or with whatever. You just you have to rid yourself from those things and replace it with healthy relationships and healthy circumstances that are going to facilitate that growth. You have to respect leadership and understand that there's always going to be a time where we have to lead, and then there's times where we have to follow. But at the end of the day, it comes down to discipline as well. Like you have to have discipline. That saying goes, if it were easy, everybody would do it, right? And what I find too many times is that when things get tough, people will take the "well, I tried" approach, or it just wasn't meant for me. It just wasn't. It just wasn't meant to be, and that's all baloney. You just got to put in the work. You got to put in the work.
Amen.
You gotta get knocked down. You have to take the feedback, and boy, there will be times where you will have to give and receive very critical feedback, and if it's coming from somebody who cares about you, execute on the things that will help you improve. And so, I just love seeing people have big, audacious dreams, and then putting in the work to get it. And there's nothing more heartbreaking from my standpoint than people who have those big, audacious dreams, but they just won't do the thing and the series of things that need to be done to realize it. So rather than accomplish the big things, they live a relatively ordinary, mediocre life, and so that would be my advice.
Copy that. Last question. Leaders are readers, and you are certainly one of them. What would be your best book recommendation to our fitness franchise audience, and why?
So, well, I've got a handful. One of the books I read early on that really changed everything was The E Factor. It's a book about a lady who owns a bakery, and I never thought that would be applicable to something. What did I say?
You said E Factor?
Oh, E-Myth. E-Myth.
Is E-Myth?
Yeah, there is also an E Factor. It was just a follow-up book, I think, but the E-Myth, yes. Okay. E-Myth. So that would be one. Short read, easy read, but man, was it impactful. Bedros' book, Man Up, was huge for me. It really made me understand that making excuses is not going to get you anywhere, and taking ownership. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink is a great book. One of the ones that I love to read, a couple of ones, is the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and then Linchpin. Those are all great books that are pretty well-rounded, where there's a lot of stuff for you as an individual to grow as a leader, and then there's others where it's much more team focused, and the importance of realizing that without a real healthy executing operating team, there's not a lot of success.
Totally. Well, our audience there got more than they bargained for, so that was awesome.
Yeah, I can keep going.
So I guess on that note, Matt, Where can our audience connect with you just to dialogue and engage further?
Yeah, man. So I would love anybody that would like to know more about entrepreneurship or business or just the project to link up with me on Instagram. Okay. So it's Matt Schneider _official.
Okay.
Send me a DM and let's chat. I love connecting with people. I love connecting with young entrepreneurs and helping them through. So
awesome.
And they can find me there.
Matt, to close this out, man, I want to acknowledge you. You are a heck of a man.
Thank you.
And I am so grateful to work with you, to be in battle together. And man, you got a heart of gold. You are an incredible leader. You have extremely strong visionary skills. And I know our team, our whole franchise, our whole clients worldwide are better off because you are in our organization. So I would acknowledge you for that. And thank you for being on the show, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me.